For two best friends, life is all about conquering fears and pushing limits. As their next adventure, the two decide to climb to the top of a remote abandoned tower which is about 2,000 feet. Everything was going according to their plan, but life had something else planned for them. Now their little adventure is turned into the most horrifying moment of their life as they get stuck on top of the tower with no way of climbing down. Do you think they will survive? Well, let's find out. Hey guys, today I am going to explain a thriller film released in 2022 called Fall. At the beginning of the film, we see three friends climbing a cliff. The newlywed Dan and Becky, together with their best friend Hunter, share a love for rock climbing. Everything was going well for them until Dan suddenly comes across a bird's nest, causing him to fall to his death. 51 weeks after Dan's death, Becky still hasn't been able to move on. She turns to alcohol to ease her pain. She even tries to push everyone away from her, including her father. So Becky's father calls her best friend Hunter, hoping that she can help Becky heal. Soon after arriving, Hunter tells Becky that they should climb a 2,000-foot-long abandoned TV tower in order to conquer her fears and have some fun together. At first, Becky disagrees with the idea, but she eventually says yes after Hunter keeps insisting. Becky even decides to take Dan's ashes so that she can scatter them from the top. The two then set out on the supposed to be life-changing adventure. While eating at a diner, Becky learns that Hunter is now working as an online host to earn some extra income. The next morning, the two friends then drive towards the tower. After driving for hours, they finally arrive at the abandoned TV tower. While walking towards the tower, they see some vultures eating an animal, which they probably should have taken as a sign of death. But they decide to continue anyway. Even the abandoned tower itself is rusty and old. Becky is having second thoughts, but Hunter pushes her to continue by saying some motivating things, not knowing that they will need some real motivation later on in the movie. While climbing up the tower, Becky accidentally breaks one of the steps of the ladder. But this doesn't stop them from continuing on their so-called thrilling adventure. When they stop to get some rest, Hunter informs Becky that they have climbed 1,000 steps, which is equal to the height of the Eiffel Tower. But Hunter is not satisfied and wants to climb up even further. When Becky looks down to see the ground, she is stunned to see how high they have climbed. Becky is beginning to feel more uncomfortable, but Hunter starts making fun of her by shaking the ladder. Unbeknownst to them, one of the bolts of the ladder loosens up and falls to the ground. After some struggle, the two finally make it to the top of the tower. Even Becky is now thrilled to have climbed up this far and celebrates with Hunter. Hunter then brings out her drone and they start filming for their vlog. But since Hunter wants some more thrill, she asks Becky to record her while she dangles herself on the edge. If this wasn't enough, she even asks Becky to do the same. After some hesitation, Becky finally agrees and holds onto Hunter while hanging off the edge. Becky is finally happy to have overcome her fears. She then brings out Dan's ashes and spreads them out into the wind. Once they are satisfied with their adventure, they decided to climb back down. However, their real adventure begins now. As Becky begins climbing down, the ladder breaks apart and Becky is left hanging. Hunter quickly grabs the pole and pulls Becky up. However, the ladder fully breaks apart and it falls onto the ground. Hunter and Becky are just happy to be alive, but their happiness fades away when they see that the ladder is gone, realizing that now they can't climb back down. So they tried to call for help, but there is obviously no signal at this height. The two then find a small emergency box at the pole's base which has a flare gun and binoculars. They also could have used Hunter's drone to ask for help, but her backpack containing the drone and some water fell on a satellite dish far from their reach. On top of that, Becky notices that she has a huge cut on her thigh. Becky is beginning to get worried, but Hunter assures her that someone must have heard the loud noises of the ladders falling onto the ground and help should arrive soon. All they need to do is sit down, relax, and wait for help to come. A few hours later, Hunter sees an RV parked close to the tower with her binoculars, but they think that the RV might just be abandoned. Just then, Hunter recalls that there was a signal when they were at the bottom of the tower. So she creates a post to call for help on her Instagram and then lowers the phone by tying it to the rope. But this doesn't work and they still have no signal. Becky then gets a brilliant idea to simply drop the phone. But in order to prevent it from shattering, they decided to tuck it inside Hunter's shoe and pad it with socks and her push-up bra. Although they dropped the shoe, they have no way of knowing whether it worked or not. Just then, Becky notices a tattoo on Hunter's feet. 143 was a number which was familiar only to her and Dan. However, before she could ask her about it, Hunter notices a man and his dog near the tower. The man was talking to someone and he can hear the girl shouting from the top of the tower. Becky then decides to throw her shoes down, hoping the man will notice. Although the man sees the shoe, he ignores it and he walks away. Becky wanted to fire the flare gun, but just then Hunter sees that there are some people in the RV parked next to the tower. So they decided to fire the flare gun at night so that they have a better chance of being spotted. While waiting, Becky checks her phone and comes across a video of her wedding. In the video, she sees Hunter looking at her and Dan with jealousy. Hunter then tells Becky to fire the flare gun immediately as the men are outside the RV. Luckily, the two men in the RV see them and drive their vehicle up to the gate. But instead of helping them, they steal Hunter's car and leave. And now Becky and Hunter are more hopeless than ever. Later that night, Becky asks Hunter about the tattoo on her feet. Hunter reluctantly admits that she once had an affair with Dan. Although she tries to apologize, she realizes that her friendship with Becky will not be the same anymore. Hunter confesses that she did develop feelings for Dan, but she decided to quit her relationship just before Dan and Becky got married. Becky realizes that her father was right all along and Dan never loved her the way she loved him. It's been 24 hours and the two are still stuck at the tower with no hope of getting help anytime soon. So Hunter volunteers to climb down to the satellite dish and get her backpack, as she blames herself for getting them stuck and wants to make up to Becky. Although she gets down to the satellite, she still falls short of reaching the bag. So she detaches herself from the rope and then leaps onto the dish to reach her backpack. Unfortunately, the rope is now out of her reach. So she hooks the bag onto the rope with her selfie stick and then takes a risky leap back onto the rope. Hunter then begins climbing up and nearly reaches the top. But then she loses her grip and falls down. Becky is devastated to see her best friend fall, but she is soon relieved to see Hunter still hanging on the rope. Since Hunter's hands are injured, Becky now has to use all of her strength to pull Hunter back to safety. They then decide to write a note asking for help so that they can put it onto their drone and fly it to the diner where they ate before. Unfortunately, the drone runs out of battery and they are forced to call the drone back. Later that night, Becky gets another idea. She sees the red light on top of the tower and decides to charge the drone using Hunter's lamp life hack, which Hunter taught her a while ago. So the next morning, Becky decides to climb the pole herself as Hunter's hands are injured. Becky eventually gets to the top and unplugs the light socket to charge the drone. She holds onto the pole for as long as she can to fully charge the drone. However, a vulture comes out of nowhere and starts attacking Becky in her most vulnerable position. But Becky isn't willing to give up and manages to keep the drone secure by clinging tightly to the pole. As soon as the drone is fully charged, she gets down immediately. Now, all they need to do is wait for the diner to open before sending the drone. Hungry and exhausted, Becky struggles to stay awake, but Hunter keeps talking to her to keep her awake. Once the diner opens up, they attach the note and fly the drone to the diner. Unfortunately, the drone gets hit by a passing truck. Now they are more hopeless than ever with no way of calling for help. Becky tells Hunter that she won't be able to survive another night, but Hunter reminds her to be strong. Becky then gets one last idea. She asks Hunter for other shoes so that she can throw her phone and call for help. However, Hunter refuses and reveals that she has been dead this whole time. It turns out that Hunter died a while ago and she slipped after getting the backpack. Currently, the vultures are feasting on her lifeless body as it lies on top of the satellite dish below. Realizing that she was all alone all this time, Becky starts crying. She is thinking that she too is going to die soon. So she makes a farewell video for her father and apologizes to him for never listening. Meanwhile, her father is worried about her and is continuously attempting to get in touch with her and find her. The next morning, Becky wakes up to a hungry vulture pecking at her wounds. She kills the bird with all her remaining strength and eats the vulture raw to regain her strength. With this, she regains some hope and decides to descend down to Hunter's dead body. The vultures feasting on Hunter's body get startled as she releases the rope and lands on top of the satellite dish. After texting her father to let him know where she is, she then puts the phone inside Hunter's sneakers. Becky then apologizes to her before inserting the shoe into Hunter's abdomen, after which she tosses her body onto the ground. Hours later, Becky's father arrives at the tower. Police and medics are already there and they have saved Becky. Becky apologizes to her father for everything, and the two finally embrace each other. So this was the story of Fall. Do subscribe for more interesting movies, and I'll see you in the next hunt.